hush your mouth, child. She would say, hush your mouth, child. C-H-I-L-E, child. Because she lived in Birmingham, Alabama. And I spent time with her because in the place where we were living, on the Army base, they did not have a school for the black children. And so, my mother sent me to my grandma's. If she hadn't sent me to her, you see, one thing leads to another. If she hadn't sent me to her, I probably wouldn't have started storytelling at my older age. But the story about my mother going to the Army post to get a school started. Do we have time for that one?
Yeah.
Well, my mother was a young woman.
There wasn't any school for you?
No, there was school for the white kids. But this was many years ago, probably in the 1920s. And there wasn't school for the black children, so the black parents had to send their children away to school if they wanted them to go to school. Georgia. But my mother, being a brave young woman, she had been a child bride. She was like age 16 when she got married to my dad. She went to the chaplain and she said, I don't think this is right. I do not think this is right. We have a right to go to school just like anybody else. And the chaplain agreed with her. That's right, that's right. But my hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. You'll have to go to the lieutenant. So my mother put on her silk stockings and her beautiful shoes and her white gloves and her hat. And she went to the lieutenant's kitchen. Because in those days, black people did not go to the office. They went to the kitchen and she talked to the maid, to the cook, and the cook, when she finished, went out to serve the coffee to the lieutenant. She whispered to him in his ear, there's a black lady out in the kitchen who would like to speak to the lieutenant, she said to the lieutenant's wife. And the lieutenant's wife said to the lieutenant, there's a black lady out there in the kitchen who would like to speak to you. And so, of course, when he finished his coffee, he came out to the kitchen, and my mother repeated the same thing she'd said to the chaplain. I think it's a shame not to have a school for the black children here at this post. And the lieutenant smiled graciously and said, well, I agree, that's right. But my hands are tied. You have to go and speak to the captain. And so, of course, she went to the captain. It's a line of communication. The line of communication. She went to the captain and she put on her good shoes and her silk stockings and her gloves and her hat, and she went through the same routine. She went to the kitchen and she talked to the cook, and the cook went in and served coffee, and when he was through with his coffee, the captain came out to the kitchen and he agreed with her. You are certainly right. There should be a school for the black children at the post. But my hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. You'll need to speak with the colonel. And so my mother, a young woman, the next week she went right on over to the colonel's home, and she went through the same routine. She went to the kitchen, because in those days, as you recall, black people did not go to the office. She went to the kitchen, she talked to the cook served the coffee to the colonel, and the colonel came out to the kitchen, and the same thing he said. You are absolutely right, my dear lady. You are absolutely right. There should be a school for the black children in this community at this post. But my hands are tied. I have no authority. You will need to go to the, well, let me see who was, the general. Yeah.
All the way to the general.
Yeah, all the way to the general, and I'll never forget. This is the thing that makes me emotional. It makes me get dizzy to think about this. Young woman, my mother, went all the way up the hill to the general's house. All the way up there, those steps, and she went into the kitchen and she talked to the cook at the general's mansion, and the general came out to the kitchen and he agreed with her. You are right. You are absolutely right, my dear lady. And we will be very glad to get a teacher for the black children as soon as we have a place for her to stay. Well, she can stay at my house. My mother jotted out right quickly. She can stay with me. And I'll never forget that my first teacher lived at my house. My first teacher at the Army post lived in my own house. Her name was Miss Bell. And I stepped on a pin, the pin bent, and that's the way the story went. That's a true story.